We're going to move on to bass now. As I mentioned earlier, the song kind of had this Beatles undertone that I wanted to play up on, so I used an Epiphone violin bass that I've modded throughout the years to feel a little bit more like a Hofner. We recorded that through an Ampeg with a Telefunken M82 directly into the UA LA610, where we EQ'd it a little bit and squashed it pretty heavily with some of that LA2A styled compression. And then our DI was actually into the UA 710D, where we were able to squash it a little bit more with a faster attack compression. So that way we were able to kind of create this movement on the bass between the LA2A styled compressor and the 1176 styled compressor. And there are 2 bass tracks on this song, which I will get to right now. Okay, now I have several things going on here. The amp's a little old and a little noisy. We threw a little X noise on there. One of the biggest reasons why I use Logic is for their I/O plugin with all this outboard, and being a hybrid, I want to have all my outboard as accessible as a plugin, which Logic's I/O plugin allows me to do. So as you can see, we're putting this through the distressor, and the distressor is giving it about 12 dB of gain reduction. It's a 10:1 ratio or an opto mode, with some distortion on their filtering side. So we're squashing the bass pretty hard. And then from there, we're using a little bit of a cool plugin called Bass Rider. Let's see what that's doing. And then we're still smoothing that out just a little bit with another LA2A. So we tracked it with an LA2A, we're throwing it through a distressor, we're using Bass Rider, and we're throwing it through another compressor. And I think the bass sounds fantastic. I did mention we had 2 bass tracks on this song. In the verses, I wanted something really dynamic, something that kind of reminded me of Arctic Monkeys in a sense, and just something that was a little bit, for lack of a cooler term, epic. So I grabbed a distortion pedal, and drums, bass, and guitar now, the very basics of what we've gone over so far. This is what they sounded like together. Okay, on that bass, because I had that huge kick drum going on, I wanted that to cut through, and especially the sustain. I didn't want the sustain of that bomb-sounding kick to get lost. So for that, to tame that, I used a plugin that I really like called Waves Factory Track Spacer. You basically sidechain it to the track that you want it to cut or add to. So whenever the bass is hitting, that it's letting that kick drum come through by sidechaining that frequency out. So you can see it on here. And as you can see, we're only using a 25% ratio, so we're not abusing this in any way. So yeah, that's the basic guitars, bass, and drums.